So starter, who is it for? Nick, we talked, a lot of people are saying, listen, we need to start doing inbound marketing. Even though it's 2017, a lot of people have already adopted inbound marketing as a practice, but still there are a ton of companies that haven't yet.
Just a
And
ton
they
of companies that are still building their marketing department. Talk to people like that
absolutely,
every week.
yeah. And then they're saying, listen, this inbound marketing thing sounds good. I saw the speaker. I think he makes a lot of sense, or she makes a lot of sense. We are thinking about buying HubSpot, uh, and they, what they really look like. They have a website that's never been optimized for inbound marketing before. There's not a blog on there. There's no content. It's very lead
Brochure.
driven, very brochure driven. They're not getting a lot of traffic. If they are getting any leads, it's because somebody maybe told them to go to the website, check it out, fill out the contact form. That's the only types of leads they're getting from their site. You guys could probably all picture the type of company I'm talking about, because we were all probably working for a business at one point that had a website like that.
Yeah. It's a phase.
So what does that program need to look like? So some of the things I jotted down, again,
Yeah, let's
Nick,
take
if
a
I'm
look.
missing anything, but let's start talking through some of the things that a company like that needs to do in the very, very early stages if they're going to start trying to get some early traction.
Yeah, I got the list in front of me. Let's go.
I think the first thing is lots of education. If you're going to do inbound marketing, part of your program needs to be continuous education.
Yes.
I say that because when we first decided we are going to be an inbound marketing agency, and I've told the story before, I got off the phone with HubSpot and I went to my team and said, guys, we're going to be an inbound marketing agency now. And they said, what does that mean? And I said, I don't know, but we're going to figure it out together. One of the most important things that we did very early on was to educate ourselves. We watched webinars like crazy. We had to learn what inbound marketing was. We had to learn what HubSpot was and how to use it. We had to learn how to sell to inbound leads and sell inbound marketing services. There's a giant amount of education. But I think one of the most important things we're talking about with education is I'm the leader of the organization, right? So we're educating from the top of the company that the leadership needs to be completely bought in to this new practice, and that
Yes.
involves some fundamental changes to the organization. So Nick, yeah, talk to us a little bit more about education here. What am I missing?
Well, I gave a talk at Inbound, as you know, Bob, a couple weeks ago,
Which was
and
awesome, by the way.
thank you. And it was 5 things that marketers wish they had known. Successful marketers wish they had known when they first got started. And when I went around and interviewed some of the customers I onboarded when I worked at HubSpot, who I thought were very successful years later, I said, what was big for you that I should tell these folks? And things that came up again and again was get educated.
Mm-hmm.
That was crucial for some of the A players who really made this whole thing work, is they just absorbed it. I just got off the phone with a potential client before we got on our podcast here, Bob, and that's what this person is doing.
Yeah.
He's not even going to be the main marketer, but he took it upon himself to get certified in everything he possibly could, so that he fully understood the whole realm of it. Education is free. It's value adding for yourself. And the last thing you want to do is be having to re-educate your whole team when you really should be talking about what to do next, not
Yeah.
what this all is and how it all works. That should be over and done with. It should be about what we're actually going to do next, now that we understand what this is and how it works. Inbound certification, standard for everybody in the organization who's going to be touching or being involved with inbound marketing. And then you can start to assign out some of
Or
those.
any digital marketing program, I
And
would
that's
say.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Inbound certification to me is the most approachable. It's free. It's from HubSpot,
Yeah.
but absolutely don't want to discount a lot of the great programs. There are great things about Digital Marketer and their programs as well.
Yes. Yeah. So we're harping on education. I think that's the most important first step. If you're going to do this, you have to educate yourselves, and then everything else you can follow more steps as you go through. You have to have the right people in place. It doesn't mean that you go and get somebody that's never done this before. It's fresh out of school, maybe knows how to use a computer.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get somebody
digitally savvy, or yeah.
You really need to get somebody in place that can own this and own it to get real ROI for the organization. And that's probably not going to be a 23 or 24-year-old person. You're probably going to need somebody with a few more years experience. And I say that being the same person that was 22, 23, 24 years old, doing it for a manufacturing company. That's how I got my start. But I don't think that's normal. I don't think that's fair to expect, because I see for every company that goes that route, I see too many that struggle, and they get somebody in that doesn't know what they're doing, and then they start churning through people and they say inbound doesn't work. You didn't really have somebody that could really lead it inside your organization.
Hmm.
So
I would add, Bob, someone who has project management and project leadership experience as well. I think that's a good way to quantify. Are they experienced enough? Is they should at least be willing to, if they haven't already gotten that education that Bob mentioned first, they should be willing to do that right away and then also apply that to good old fashioned project management best practices. Have they managed a complex project before that
yeah,
involved more than one department, that involved multiple stakeholders, that didn't report directly to them? We want to see some evidence of that because that's what's going to be necessary to succeed
yeah.
with inbound.
Now, I say things on here that might be a little controversial, so I'm going to drop another one here.
Boom.
Um, I don't think that you start an inbound marketing program by building out a giant strategy and doing big personas and trying to get everything right up front, because that's very, very expensive, and there's no guarantee that what you're going to put into that building that whole program is going to be right.
Hmm.
I honestly feel you got to get right to work. That's
Hmm.
why we did it when we built Impact. I've seen a lot of people get off the ground because there's so much you need to know to do a program, but that you might as well just do a few things and do it well. And some of the first things that you really need to do is get going blogging. Just get in the habit of creating content on some kind of calendar schedule. Think you should know your audience well enough when you really don't have any kind of base, you still should know your customer enough that you say, okay, we're going to write something, and we think that if we pick a client and we just picture them as we're writing it, we should be able to hit the mark without having to do extensive persona research. I'd rather see people get going and start putting some pieces of content out there and using, how that content is performing to be a base for whether or not, to start building our personas later on based on
Hmm.
what we learned from that. But I think you
Yeah.
got to get some of your initial things up and going. And I think the next thing need to really think about is from your education, building out that funnel. That's really what this whole thing is about, right? So what types of content will attract people to us for the very first time? What do we want to drive them to next? Is there some kind of offer conversion point where we can get their email address next? And then how do we nurture them so they want to talk to sales? I think that's one of the first things that you should do. So once you get going, you have the ability to create content, you've released a few pieces, and you're saying, I could do this now. The next thing to do is start building that first funnel, because what you can do is you can start driving paid traffic to the content up front and make that funnel start working.
Hmm.
So that's really like what your starter program really should look like. Have somebody that knows what they're doing guide you through it. It's not that hard. You can work with an agency, you can get a consultant. If you hire somebody that knows what they're doing, they can get that set up for you at first, right? That's kind of like where you need to start. Um, because the desired outcomes here, if you're doing a starter program and you say, okay, well, within 6 to 12 months, where do we want to be if this thing is working? You want to make sure that leadership is bought in and the company sees value in where you're going. You want to make sure that you didn't waste a ton of your resources creating a bunch of documents, that you actually just got things live on your website, you publish stuff. You have your first few pieces of content built and you've developed some kind of consistency of creating new content. You have a funnel and you're nurturing the leads that are going through that funnel, and you're driving people to the top of the funnel, and business is coming in. You're actually generating leads, real business leads from it. If you get there within 6 to 12 months, then you're really off to a great start.
Agreed, Bob. I love the saying, it's impossible to steer a parked car, because you brought up first, like, don't do a whole big strategy up front. Get the car out of the driveway first, and then you can start steering. Because you may not even know what you're planning and what you're strategizing until you actually do it. We can all watch a video of what it's like to do a 50-yard dash perfectly. That's not really going to teach you how to run a 50-yard dash. You got to get out there and start running. And the fact of the matter is whoever sponsored you to do the inbound effort at your organization, they're watching the clock and they're watching you,
Yeah,
and they're seeing how long is this person going to take to get traction and show us their taillights and dust. So you need to make something happen. And I love what Bob just suggested. Focus on what you're already serving your clients and prospects with right now. What was the last long email that somebody wrote to a client to explain a concept that you explain again and again and again? Maybe you already have sales training decks on it or whatever. Boil that
yeah,
down. Let's turn those into some blog articles and get it going. And then I love the funnel mapping point there, Bob. And a concept I've talked with people about that's simple to understand is Map out your sales process. If you can't map out your sales process, we're toast. We need to know essentially what are the steps, what's the content that ideally would have been exchanged, even if it's manually exchanged between people. And that's the stuff you want to start creating. That becomes an outline for your funnel. And obviously,
Yeah.
we're going to go a little bit further than we ever had before, to talk to people and educate them, but at least start with contentizing the areas of your sales process and what you need to educate people about in those steps along the way. That can be the foundation of your funnel. But
Yeah.
absolutely endorse everything you said there, Bob. That's
Awesome.
kind of what we talk about for getting started and on ground
Yeah.
ground level.
Yeah. I see too many people waste the first 2 or 3 months and haven't published anything.
Right?
And I don't think that's beneficial for anybody.
No.
In the comments here, Ryan Casey says, I love what you're saying about getting going and building habits versus the HubSpot suggestions that seem to involve lots of spreadsheets and planning.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
mean, that's all good. We want to eventually start. That's what I meant by project management. Like, have a rigor for that, but maybe it's a little bit more retrospective. This is what I did. This is what I scrambled to pull together, and this is out of that dust what we feel will be the repetitive things that worked. And these are the
Yeah.
things I'm going to avoid from the experiment. You know,
Yeah. Stage one, if you get people excited and you can get some content on your site, you can, again, develop those really good habits. And when I say habits, find, and some people think when we talk about creating content, it has to be blog articles. It doesn't. It could be videos like this. It could be a YouTube channel. That's how Gary Vee got started, right? You could just, whatever it is that fits what you do. Um,
you
yeah.
know what I think holds people up, Bob, and I can sympathize with this, is suddenly you're writing content for like strangers. And I know people say, well, that's why I need a buyer persona. Yeah, eventually we'll get there. Okay. But
Yes.
for now, don't write that blog article, make that video or whatever for whomever on the internet who might read that. That's what freezes everybody up. Write it for the 4 to 5 people that you talked to that day who asked you a question.
Yes.
Write it for the 4 or 5 staff members who give a crap about needing to have the website be more educational and informational instead of being super salesy and just a brochure. Write it for them, email it to them, and you'll have 4 to 5 guaranteed views and contacts out of that. Start there, nail that,
Yes.
and then build on from there.